The date is April 28th, 1967. A room in Houston, Texas. Cameras flash. Reporters crowd the doorway. A young man, 25 years old, heavyweight champion of the world, stands at a threshold. Not a boxing ring, a military induction center. One step forward, and he keeps everything: his title, his fortune, his freedom. One step back, and he loses it all. The officer calls his name, Cassius Clay. He doesn't move. Again, Cassius Clay. Silence. What would you do if everything you'd ever worked for hung on a single choice and your conscience told you to walk away? This is the untold story of Muhammad Ali and the price of principle. Welcome to the untold spirit. Muhammad Ali. You know the name, the legend, the greatest. But what you might not know is what it cost him to become that legend. Not in the ring, but outside of it. This isn't a story about boxing. It's a story about what happens when you refuse to back down, even when the whole world is watching. Cassius Marcellus Clay, Jr. was born in Louisville, Kentucky in 1942. Segregated South, Jim Crow laws, a black kid in a world that told him to stay quiet, stay small, stay in his place. But Ali, he was never quiet. At 12 years old, someone stole his bike. Furious, he told a police officer he wanted to whoop whoever took it. The officer, a boxing coach, said, "You better learn how to fight first." So he did. By 18, he won Olympic gold in Rome. By 22, he shocked the world, defeating Sonny Liston to become heavyweight champion. He was fast, flashy, fearless. "I'm the greatest," he shouted to anyone who'd listen. And he was right. But in 1964, something shifted. He joined the Nation of Islam, changed his name from Cassius Clay, a slave name, he called it, to Muhammad Ali. Suddenly, he wasn't just a fighter. He was a symbol, a voice, a threat to the status quo. And then, the war came calling. 1966. The Vietnam War is escalating. Young American men are being drafted by the thousands. Ali receives his draft notice. At first, he's classified 1Y, unfit for service due to low scores on an Army intelligence test. But as the war intensifies, the standards drop. His classification changes to 1A. He's eligible. He's expected to serve. The press asks him what he thinks about the war. His answer is immediate, unflinching. "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong. No Viet Cong ever called me the N-word." The backlash is instant. Newspapers call him a coward. Politicians call him a traitor. Former fans burn his posters in the streets. Even other black athletes, heroes in their own right, distance themselves from him. But Ali doesn't budge. He applies for conscientious objector status, citing his religious beliefs. The request is denied. Now he has a choice: report to induction or refuse. And refusing means prison, means losing his title, means being banned from boxing, the only thing he's ever known. April 28th, 1967. The induction center in Houston. Ali arrives in a dark suit, calm, composed. Inside, 26 young men line up. The officer calls each name. When it's Ali's turn, he hears Cassius Clay. He doesn't respond. The officer repeats it, louder. Still nothing. An officer pulls him aside, explains the consequences: 5 years in prison, a $10,000 fine, the end of his career. Ali listens, nods. Then he says it clearly for the record: "I refuse to be inducted into the armed forces of the United States." Within hours, the New York State Athletic Commission suspends his boxing license. The World Boxing Association strips him of his title.
He's 25 years old, in his prime, undefeated. And just like that, it's gone. For 3.5 years, Muhammad Ali doesn't fight. Not in a ring, anyway. He fights in courtrooms, appeals his conviction all the way to the Supreme Court. He fights on college campuses, giving speeches about war, race, and justice, often to hostile crowds. He fights to pay his bills. His bank accounts are frozen, his passport revoked. The prime years of an athlete's career wasted. But here's the thing. Ali never apologized, never wavered, never said, "Maybe I was wrong." He believed he was right, and he was willing to pay the price. In 1971, the Supreme Court overturned his conviction, a unanimous decision. He returned to the ring, fought Joe Frazier in the fight of the century. Lost that one, but he kept fighting. 1974, the rumble in the jungle. He defeats George Foreman in Zaire, reclaiming the heavyweight title. Against all odds, he became champion again. Here's what history doesn't always tell you. At the time, most Americans hated Muhammad Ali for what he did. A 1967 poll showed that nearly 60% of the country disapproved of his refusal to serve. But decades later, he's a hero, an icon, a man who stood on principle when it cost him everything. The same people who called him a traitor now call him courageous. So what changed? Ali didn't. The world did. And that's the lesson. When you stand for something, really stand for it, you might stand alone. You might lose everything. But if you're right, if your conscience is clear, history has a way of catching up. Ali once said, "I know where I'm going, and I know the truth, and I don't have to be what you want me to be. I'm free to be what I want." That's the untold spirit. Not the punches he threw, not the titles he won, but the moment he stood still and refused to move. April 28, 1967. A young man walks out of an induction center. No uniform, no title, no guarantees. Just a belief that some things are worth more than gold belts and glory. History remembers victories, but it honors the people who were willing to lose everything, to stay true to themselves. And that is the untold spirit.